Hello? Hello?
Wait for 5 minutes. Some technical error
Okay,
there.
sir.
Oh,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On behalf of HRDC, Gujarat University, uh, Miss Anal, may I request Miss Anal to just introduce our esteemed speaker, Miss Anal. I think Anal is trying to join. મારો આ ત્યાંનો નથી આવતો અહીંયા.
Sir, should I start? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, audible.
Anal,
Yes, ma'am.
Anal is trying to
Yes,
introduce
ma'am.
you, ma'am, but
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I
but
am Anal Maitre, Assistant Coordinator in Refresher Course of Environmental Studies organized by MMTC HRDC Gujarat University. Our invited guest is Dr. Bindu Vijay. She is an Assistant Professor in Science and Technology, Gujarat National Law University, Gandhinagar. Let me give you a brief introduction of ma'am. She has been associated with GNLU since July 2004. She is also a member of GNLU Center for Environment, Sustainability and Climate Justice. She has been teaching genetics, biotechnology, and bioethics to law students both for undergraduate and postgraduate programs. She has designed and offered certificate courses in genetics and law and biotechnology, law, and bioethics. She has completed 3 projects, one as co PI and two as a PI, under the GNLU Faculty Seed Grant Program. She has co guided one PhD student and has been awarded the PhD degree. 3 students are currently registered and pursuing their PhD under her supervision. She was an expert member for reviewing Class 11 biology textbook published by Gujarat State Education Board in May 2011. She was an institutional ethics committee member at the Indian Institute of Public Health, Gandhinagar, from 2016 to 2019. She is currently an external member for the Academic and Research Council Committee at the Indian Institute of Public Health, Gandhinagar. She has publications in the form of journal articles, book chapters, edited books, and presented several papers in various national and international conferences. She has also taken lectures in environmental law, impact assessment, and audit for MSc Environmental Science course at HNGU Patan in the year 2020. She frequently delivers lectures on biotechnology, bioethics, and law at various institutes like IIPH Gandhinagar School of Law, Gujarat University, and at School of Law, VIT Chennai. She has recently delivered lecture on plant genetics resources and its management in an UGC HRDC refresher course in basic science as at IDVV Jabalpur during 21st August 2023 to 2nd September 2023. Her areas of interest vary from genetics, biodiversity, plant biotechnology, and biotechnology regulations. She has held various administrative positions in the capacity of convener and member in various committees center at Gujarat National Law University. She is currently serving as the PhD program head at Gujarat National Law University. Her topic for today's lecture is hazardous waste management. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Anil ma'am. At the outset, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to HRDC Gujarat University and my special thanks to Professor Bharat Maitreya sir and Professor Nainesh Modi sir for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to deliver the lecture and interact with the participants of the refresher course. I once again thank Professor Bharat Maitreya sir for giving me an opportunity, as well as to Professor Nainesh Modi sir for giving me this opportunity to deliver lecture in UGC refresher course. So with your kind permission, may I start the session? Participants, may I start? I hope you can see the PPT.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. It is
Yes,
visible
ma'am.
on screen.
Thank you. Yes, sir. So to begin with, my today's topic of discussion is hazardous waste management. Now, the reason why I have selected this topic is the theme for the upcoming World Environment Day is basically on combating desertification or land management. And we have immensely seen that over the last several years, one of the biggest challenge that is being faced by countries across the globe, including India, is the way to manage the hazardous waste, which is generated from various sources. The reason why this is considered to be a major concern is because of increasing concerns and threat that is arising from this hazardous waste in terms of the new pathogens that is being released. COVID-19 is an example. So many concerns have been raised because of the mismanagement of the hazardous components or hazardous waste that is being released. And the biggest challenge as of today is also the management of hazardous waste. So in my class, I shall be discussing about waste and its type, and specifically focusing on hazardous waste. How is it impacting? What are the methods that is being adopted both at national as well as international level in management of this hazardous waste? And we will then look into some of the laws and legislation that is applicable to the hazardous waste management in our country. So to begin with, you can interrupt in between if you have any query, and you can or else you can take the questions at the end. You can leave. I mean, you can ask the questions at the end. So it is totally up to the participants. So with whatever you feel. So if you interact in between, it will be a good flow for me as well. So to begin with. We have seen that there has been large scale production of various chemicals and energy, and other developmental activities are taking place like agriculture, urbanization, healthcare activities, pharmaceutical product, medicines that is being produced during the past 4 decades. And all these have led to a release of large quantities of waste into the environment in the form of either solid, liquid, or gases. A good amount of these waste is potentially hazardous to the environment, and it is also extremely dangerous to living organisms, including human beings. However, we see that most of this waste are generated from industry, and industry is also a very important component or essential segment of any society for its development. So waste production is inevitable outcome of this developmental activities. The more industries, the more waste are released. So we cannot avoid the production of this waste, because industrial development is the core for any development of any nation. Waste, or how do you define waste, is basically when a material or when something it becomes when it is discarded without expecting to be compensated for its inherent value. When we don't require a substance or a material, we discard it, and that becomes the waste. And these waste may pose a potential hazard to human health as well as environment, including animals, by contaminating or by interfering with our soil, air, water. And when it is not properly treated, it may get seepage or disposed into various water resources or land resources, causing a huge threat to human, animal, as well as environment. Data has shown that 42 lakh metric tons of hazardous waste was generated in India in the year 2021-2022. So now the question before us is, how do we classify waste, or what are the approaches that is being taken for classification of waste? As I told you, waste is considered to be something which is not in use. A material, when it is of not in use, it is of no use, you call it as a waste. And there are various mechanisms that is being used for the classification of waste. One way is based on the physical state, that is whether it is a solid, liquid, or gases. Another is by their physical properties, that is whether it is recyclable. Some of the waste are recyclable, some of the waste are compostable, they become compost, some of them are combustible in nature. So depending upon the physical property, you can classify the waste. Another way that is being also seen is classifying the waste according to their origin or original use. Say, for example, food waste, packaging waste. These are other terms or terminologies that is being given. Then based on the material also, we can classify the waste. Say, for example, whether the paper, for example, the waste coming from paper industry, paper waste, right? Glass waste. So based on the material also, one can classify the waste. Then another way is the source of classification. Sources, I mean, from what are the origin? From where do they originate? Say, for example, waste coming or generated from home, domestic waste. Then commercial activity also releases lot of waste. Then industrial activity also releases lot of waste. In fact, this type of classification, which is based on the source, is most widely accepted form of classification. And then again, you can also classify waste based on their safety level, that is hazardous waste and non-hazardous waste. Now, however, if you look into the waste in general, in the whether it is whether we are using the source based classification or a material based classification or physical properties based classification, we can see that these are the two categories of waste that can be seen. That is, one is the hazardous and non-hazardous. So a hazardous waste can be either released from domestic household, or it can be from commercial activity, or it can also come from industry. So hazardous waste is nothing but any waste which by reason of characteristics such as physical, chemical, biological, reactive, toxic, flammable, explosive or corrosive causes danger or is likely to cause danger to health or environment. So that means a waste is considered to be hazardous based on the properties that make it potentially dangerous or harmful for human health and environment. So as it is evident from the previous slide, you can say that a hazardous waste can be either a liquid, or it could be a solid, or it could be a contained glass, or it could be anything that has been discarded, unused commercial product, or discard or unused industrial product, discarded or unused domestic product can be considered to be a hazardous waste. Now, waste is considered to be hazardous if it exhibits one or more of the following characteristic property. That is, it could be a what you call it as an explosive, it could be a flammable liquids or flammable solids. That means basically what is indicate that a waste may exhibit the characteristic property of a flammability, ignitability, or sometimes it may also explode if the representative sample of the waste has these properties. Similarly, some of the waste are also they may catch fire spontaneously, and some may also have a oxidizing property, some may be corrosive in nature. That means a waste may exhibit the characteristic of the corrosiveness or corrosivity if a representative sample of the waste has some properties, like for example, if it is aqueous and has a pH which is less than or equal to 2 or greater than equal to 12.5, there are certain parameters that is also given in one of the in the hazardous waste management rule. However, it is not necessary that a waste may always be having all the properties. It may have one, or some hazardous waste may be having causing infectious in nature, it may be simply corrosive, or it could be simply toxic in nature, right? So either of the one property is seen, or a characteristic property is seen in a waste, you call it as a hazardous in nature. And there could be certain waste which could be a combination of many of these characteristic property as well. So that becomes very more important in dealing with or managing of the hazardous waste. For example, any waste that is being liberated from incineration factories, that may releasing a huge amount of dioxin to the environment. Now, dioxins are considered to be they are considered to be undesirable end product whenever chlorine containing components are burnt. So whenever you burn chlorine containing components, by default dioxins are released to the environment, and it is a undesirable product that is being produced. It is never intended to be produced, but it's an undesirable end product as a result of incineration, which is coming mainly from your household waste, from the municipality waste, as well as from the hospital waste. These are the three major sources for releasing dioxins, and we all of us know that dioxins is considered to be or it is reported to be one of the dirty dozen that is being mentioned in the Stockholm conference. They are persistent environment pollutant, as well as they have all the ability to get deposited in the fat, because it's a fat loving component, and again it may lead to endocrine endocrine disruption. It may interact with the development. So many factors, so many concerns have been raised because of the contamination of the environment indirectly and directly. Animals who get exposed to this dioxin affected by various factors, right? So hazardous substances, it may have either a combination of these characteristic property, or it could be having either of the two, and when that is seen in a substance, in a matter, in a subject, you call it as a hazardous in nature. Similarly, a waste can also exhibit toxicity, and in a biological term, you can call it as a toxic substance, or a toxic waste is one when the concentration of the waste constituent, they are they have an acute oral lethal dose of 50 less than 2500 milligram per kilogram. All these parameters are also given by various, what you call it as, bodies like Center for Disease Control, World Health Organization, etc. But when we go deeper into individual toxic substances, this could vary. There has been shown through experience or by standard reference method is also been given in order to understand what method could be used to pose a hazard to human health or environment because of its carcinogenity, mutagenicity, endocrine. I told you about endocrine disruptivity, etc. So poisonous substances which are poisonous in nature or may cause injury or even death if swallowed or inhaled, or when it is absorbed through skin, you can call it as a toxic substance. Say for example, insecticide, and all of us know about what happened in DDT, right? In fact, that could be used an example of how usage of insecticides can also be hazardous to the environment, right? Similarly, paints, heavy metals, all these are also considered to be a toxic in nature. Similarly, some of them are, as I told you, reactive in nature or explosive in nature, where a waste may exhibit the characteristic of reactivity if a representative sample of the waste may be normally unstable and readily undergoes violent change without detonating. So, waste, we need, again, we can say, for example, a radiological waste or a waste coming from e-factory or e-waste, all of this, may be having or showing a specific characteristic feature in order to define it or qualify as a hazardous substance. Now, if you look into the industries which produce hazardous waste, we can see it across the range. In fact, all the industries are a component of one or the other form of waste. For example, petrochemical industries, pharmaceutical industries, pesticidal industries, paint and dye, fertilizer, asbestos, caustic soda, inorganic chemicals, and general engineering. Even our, a small factory outlet that could is located in, outskirts of, for example, in Ahmedabad, that could also be a source for the release of hazardous waste. So, in that is what I want to convey. That in the first line, it is written that industries are the major source of waste, and however, you cannot, waste generated from industry is also inevitable. These are the end product of certain processes or products, which we need to find an alternative mechanism to convert it to a more usable form. Is there any query, any question? May I proceed? Okay. Now, industrial or hazardous industrial waste in India can be categorized broadly into two categories. One is the waste coming from industries. Again, I told you, it could be a petrochemical industry, it could be a pharmaceutical industry, a fertilizer industry, and those coming from industrial sectors. So these coming from industrial sectors like heavy metal, cyanide, aromatic compound, or any chemical chemical companies or industries, they are also considered to be hazardous in nature. Why? Because they are either toxic or flammable or reactive, or they are also having explosive property. Now, the second category where we can, categorize the hazardous waste based on their, source release, are those waste that are brought into India from foreign countries for recycling and reprocessing process. Say, for example, all of us know that in Alang ship breaking yard in Bhavnagar district is one of the biggest ship breaking yard in the world, right? And many a times, many ships have been brought into Indian Sea in order to dismantle the ship. Now, when that ship breaking process, or in the dismantling of the process, it may release several hazardous substances like PHBs, polyhydroxybiphenyls, asbestos, and many other components. So that is also one way where the hazardous substances are released into the environment, right? So hazardous industrial waste may either come from the industrial byproducts that is happening in India, number one. Number two, it can also be brought into our country, into India, from foreign countries for recycling and reprocessing process. Now, the example of the ship breaking or dismantling of the ship is just one example. There could be many other examples wherein we may be bringing the industrial waste for the purpose of recycling and reprocessing. Now, why do you bring it for recycling and reprocessing? Because all these imported waste, they are many a time a source of raw material for some of the other industries in India. Number one. Number two, these waste can also be used for simply the mere recovery of metals. So in these two processes also, we see that many hazardous industry waste or components which is in a way a threat to human, animal, and environmental health are released into the environment. Now, there are several symbolic representation that is being used for showing the characteristic of a hazardous waste. Now, as we proceed, I will also discuss with you what are the guidelines available, and many of the papers also do talk about these usage of these symbols. Say, for example, I just told you one of the characteristic property that also defines a waste as a hazardous waste is their ignition property. That is, it can create fire under certain condition. Similarly, corrosiveness, acid and base is also containing component is also one kind of a, what do you call it, as a hazardous waste. Then toxicity. So these are the symbols that is being sometimes it is there in the labeled in the products in order to indicate the hazardous nature or the characteristic property of the sometime the packed material or sometime the hazardous waste, etc. Right. Moving further, these are some of the newspaper clips that has been circulating around. I think all of you must have heard about an incident report coming which says about the Gujarat is also one of the state along with I think Andhra Pradesh and one more state which has been releasing a huge amount of hazardous waste. The reason is that because of the more presence of industry. So hazardous waste generation, according to this newspaper report which came in the year 2022, is talking about 2,944.7 metric tons per year, and industry is generating hazardous waste is nearly 2,380, and the capacity for the treatment and storage of the disposal facility in India is as of 60,000 tons per year. So experts also said that there should be a proper mechanism for domestic hazardous waste to reach the treatment, storage, and disposal facility for the proper disposal. And in addition to all these, that is industry keeping it apart, there are some common household hazardous waste that is also released, like for example, mercury, lamp, batteries, chemical containers, containers, paint cans, cleaners, even the normal polythene papers that we get as a part of a packaging material through Amazon goods and many other things, we simply just discard it into the normal waste. All these are also one of the major reasons for why these have been causing a threat to environment. But along with what do you call it as the impact on environment, the hazardous waste can also pose a threat to human health. It can also cause threat to environment by their seepage into their air, water, as well as soil, and they can also cause threat to the scenic beauty. For example, aesthetic impact, right? Nobody would like to see a hazardous waste simply dumped on the roadside, right? That means that will also that is also not only threatening to the environment, yes, but then that is also impacting the aesthetic beauty of a particular town or a city or a village, thereby causing a lot many adverse effect, right? So hazardous waste can impact human life through various method, because it may ultimately go to the landfill, impacting the air, water, soil, as well as several human diseases. There are several CDC report that also talks about some of the case studies that has been brought in to discuss about how hazardous waste have impacted what to say human health. I think all of you are aware about the Love Canal incident. Whenever we talk about a hazardous waste and its impact on human health or environment, the example of the Love Canal incident is the most widely discussed one. It's not that the management and of the hazardous waste started only ever since industrialization has begun. Even in the prehistoric time, as well as several ancient scripts also, there was a mechanism to deal with this waste that is being liberated from household and many other sources. Now I will be discussing our main discussion topic for today's class, that is the hazardous waste management. How do we manage it? What are the mechanisms? Of course, my topic or my lecture will be mainly concentrating about the rules and regulation that is being used for the management of hazardous waste. Participants, based on your experiences, can also talk and share with us, with me, like other mechanism, like scientific mechanism that is being used for the hazardous waste management. We do have scientific mechanisms in place, but no scientific mechanism have been foolproof in managing the hazardous waste to such an extent that no toxic components have been released. Many a time, because of the ignorance also, people may release the hazardous waste to the environment, and that becomes very pertinent to have the legislative mechanism in place in order to ensure that these waste are not interfering with the environment, because ultimately the main agenda across the globe today is the sustainable development and sustainable management of resources, as well as ensuring that everyone have the right to have right to a safe environment. So the management of hazardous waste have already been generated, but that has already been generated is one of the burning problem which required in immediate attention. We have already released lot many hazardous waste. For example, in Pirana incident, all of you must be aware about how it is impacting the air quality in Ahmedabad. Similarly, a recent example from the state of Kerala, where the dumpyard grounds all of the sudden catch fire, and NGT has asked the state, and they have imposed fine, because ultimately it is impacting the air quality, leading to toxic air quality, ultimately impacting the human life. Any query, any question? I am not able to see the chat box because I hope I can. Thank you.
Ma'am, one question.
Ji ma'am. Ji ma'am.
Why this piranha and other dumping places are catching fire?
That's what, ma'am. Some of the hazardous component, it may be explosive in nature. See, in the dump yard, we don't have a mechanism to segregate the waste. All the waste are simply going to this dump yard. We are not segregating based on their nature. We are also dumping the industrial waste. It could be a radioactive, it could be a biomedical waste, it could be a household waste, or it could be anything, right? So, if there could be a material or a substance in the dump yard, in the waste, which could be reactive or explosive in nature, that may lead to this explosion, or it may be inflammable in nature.
So doesn't the municipalities segregate it and then dump it, like already we have green waste and dry waste?
Yes, ma'am. We do have, very good question. We do have, segregation. We have biomedical management rules, which do talk about, segregating of the waste from the source level itself. But very rarely it is being followed, ma'am. Even from household waste, also, even as a citizen, as a learned citizen and responsible citizen, each of us have a responsibility in ensuring that the waste are segregated at the source level itself. Very rarely it is happening, and as a result, all these find way to the dump yard. Not only it is leading to the contamination of the environment, even the animals grazing on it, lead to they are also influenced by the toxic component present in it. One of the good example, if I can bring in here, is basically there was I don't remember which year and when it happened. There was a time when I think it was a country, Belgium. They simply were reluctant to accept the chickens and eggs coming from a particular poultry farm. The reason why they were saying is that because that particular poultry farm was located near to an incineration factory. So even incineration means what? It releases lot many harmful gases or toxic substances, and dioxin is one. And dioxin is a fat-loving body, meaning that it gets accumulated higher up in the tropical level, and the higher concentration will be seen in the in meat and meat products or chickens. And as a result, it can interfere with the biological web or the web of life. So one of the requirement maybe, I think now countries are also very much having increasing awareness about the impact that can cause on human health and environment. There will be mandatory applicability of the polluter pay principle mechanism, whereby whoever pollute the environment, they have to pay back. I think that was implemented recently in Kerala, where the dump yard caught fire and interfering with the air quality, and the industries as well as the municipality, I think, or they were asked to pay for the damages they have created to the environment.
Ma'am, I'm from a non-science background. Can you just in brief explain me what is this dioxins and how it will enter in our body from this waste?
Okay, ma'am, dioxins are basically, according to my understanding, it is basically a chemical substances, which is a undesirable end product whenever chlorine containing components are burnt. So incineration factories, that is when there are three means of treating the waste. You burn it, right? So burning has actually led to a lot of environmental impact. When you burn something, it releases harmful gases, right? And dioxin is one. So it moves to the air, and it is considered to be a persistent organic pollutant, meaning that it may get accumulated in the fatty substances, or it is basically on the plants, it may not have much impact as compared to animal body. So it will be carried away, and it is having the ability to interfere with your biological system. As I told you, since it is a fat loving body, if you are chickens, you are purchasing chickens from a as a poultry farm which is located to incineration facility, then the chances are high that the dioxin component in the egg may be high. Similarly, it could also get percolated into cattle milk, and that is why several studies have been also conducted. If you look into the WHO guidelines, they have also given certain guidelines, the permissible limit for dioxin in the food, etc.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Shall we proceed now? I hope
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
I have able to clarify your doubt.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we proceed now? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So the management of hazardous waste that have that I mean, as I told you, we already have lot dump yards of hazardous waste in different parts of the country. So managing those which is already been generated is one of the burning problem that require immediate attention. In the absence of proper dump yard as well as proper hazardous waste treatment facilities, most of them they find their way. These waste find their way to open spaces, and these open spaces from this it may ultimately will be carried away based on the characteristic features of the hazardous material in the waste to different other sources. The principal objective of any hazardous waste management plan is also to ensure safe, efficient, and economic collection as well as transportation and treatment or disposal of the waste. In fact, our legislative rule also do talk about what are the features of this particular rule and how to manage it in order to ensure that the hazard waste that is being generated is safely and treated and transported. There are certain provisions that is also being given. We will look into one by one. Now if you look into the international level, we do have several, what do you call it, as a international instruments that is being available. I am first talking about the international instrument that is available in order to discuss about the so-called management of the hazardous waste. As I told you, following there are several, one of the major concern across the globe has been to deal with the challenging issue that is rising from the liberation or the release of the hazardous waste from industries. And from the beginning, it's not that all these are some of the recent enactment. From the beginning, across the globe there has been mechanism in order to treat with this hazardous waste. And these five, conventions, they have contributed a lot to the development of a global regulatory framework in the management and disposal of the hazardous waste. The first one is the so-called hello. Yeah, I hope you can see the PPT.
Yes, madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
the first one is the Basel Convention on the transboundary movement of the hazardous waste. Now we do talk about hazardous movement of the what do you call it as transboundary movement of the hazardous waste. One of the good example, if I can give you, is somewhere, I think all of you are sitting with the mobiles, you can just Google it. In the year 2010 or so, there was a ship that was coming from I think France, and it was supposed to be dismantled at Alang shipyard. It was on the midway, and it was about to enter the Indian sea water. The case was brought before Supreme Court, and Supreme Court did mention that the ship should go back to the country of origin because dismantling of that ship in Indian sea water will expose our people, our workers to hazardous substances like asbestos, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, etc. And this ship was sent back to the country of origin. So this is one example that talk about how we are also conscious in ensuring that we are taking utmost care in ensuring that movement of hazardous waste from a different geographical location to our country is being prevented. So this is one example where I can talk to you about the how international effort is being made. 1 minute, I think my PPT is not moving. 1 minute, sir. 1 minute. Just a minute, sir. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you? Yes. Sorry. Yes. So Basel Convention is basically the main objective of the Basel Convention is also about talking on the transboundary movement of the hazardous waste, and it was as a result of awakening of the environmental awareness that was increasingly felt in order to regulate the movement of the industrialized waste, because in the initial years, it was increasingly felt that industrial world will find usually the developing and underdeveloped countries as a dump yard for the disposal of their waste. So overarching objective of the Basel Convention was also to protect the human health and the environment against the adverse effect of hazardous waste. India is also a signatory to Basel Convention. India is also a signatory to Basel Convention, and in a way we are also binding with the principle. So in one of the reason for the enactment of what you call it as the our domestic, or you can say, legislation was also in compliance with the principles of the Basel Convention. Then I won't be touching upon the major provisions here given here. It was just basically been the idea is basically to tell you what are the various mechanisms that was realized at the international level in order to manage the hazardous waste. Similarly, we also have Rotterdam Convention, which is basically on prior informed consent procedure. This is applicable especially in the case number 2 that I told you, that these are the two sources of in the second case. Say, for example, whenever we are accepting the industrial waste from other countries as part of recycling or reprocessing or any case, there is a mechanism that is involved as part of this Rotterdam Convention, that is prior informed consent procedure. We should be aware about the hazardous components present in the waste, so that the accepting country or the intending country who is going to accept this waste is aware about the so-called pollutants or the hazardous nature of the substances which is involved. Similarly, Stockholm Convention, they talk about the persistent organic pollutants. I told you about dioxin. In fact, dioxin is listed to be one of the dirty dozen mentioned in the Stockholm Convention on the persistent organic pollutants. Similarly, we have convention that talks about the management of the chemicals, Minamata Convention. So many other examples are available at the international level that do talk about how the waste is being management. Then moving further, if you look into the hazardous waste management practices that is there in India, ever since the enactment of Environmental Protection Act of 1986, India has been very proactive in ensuring that the developmental activities that is taking place should not be at the cost of environment. And there has been several mechanisms introduced by various means in order to ensure that pollutants, or you can say chemical substances, or the hazardous components should not be impacting the human animal life as well as the environment. And Environment Protection Act of 1986 is one such umbrella legislation that is involved to protect and improve the environment and regulate the management of the hazardous substances in our country. Then in India, we also have waste management, which is being governed by multiple subordinate regulation, like Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, with their Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board, who are also the main executives who are involved in ensuring that we are complying with the given regulation and legislation in order to manage the hazardous waste. Now, there are several other rules that is being introduced for governing the compliance and issues of waste management in India. However, the most important piece of legislation that deals with the so-called management of the hazardous waste is the so-called hazardous waste management handling rules of 1989 under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986, and several important amendments were made to this rule, which came in the year 2000, 2003, and finally in 2008, which is called as the hazardous waste management handling and transboundary movement rule of 2008. In 2016, this hazardous and other waste rules 2016 were notified by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in suppression to 2008 rules. The 2016 rules applied to hazardous waste, but also included other waste, which was listed in Part B, Part B and D of the Schedule 3. I'll come to that, which was missing in the earlier format. Again, the 2000 subsequent amendments were made to this 2016 rule in the year 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, and the latest came in the year 2023 to the hazardous waste management rule. The hazardous waste management rules are notified for what purpose? To ensure safe handling, generation, processing, treatment, packaging, storage, transportation, use, reprocessing, collection, conversion, and offering for sale, destruction, and disposal of hazardous waste. So you can just imagine the rule. I mean, this rule very clearly talks about the important importance given to each stage with regard to the management of the hazardous waste. That is for handling, for generation, for the treatment, as well as for transportation. If you are transporting hazardous waste, you should also follow the specific rules in order to ensure that this is not interfering with the environment. And for the disposal of the cases and enforcement of any legal right or giving relief and compensation for damages to persons and property relating to environment, we do have National Green Tribunal, which was established in the year 2010. I think some of you must have heard about a news coming from a chemical factory in Surat, I think 2-3 years back, or I think 1 year back, which was responsible for the release of so many chemical gases interfering with the environment, and NGT has imposed I think a fine of 50 lakh or so, because they were company and the factories were involved in the release of these hazards. Now, if you look into, as I told you, in our country we do have this hazardous waste management rule of 2016, which lays down the responsibility of the hazardous waste generator, that is a occupier, regarding the pollution prevention and waste minimization through reuse, recycling, and recovery. Just now, one of the participants asked me, we do have this, color codes for segregating of the waste. Then how does it, find its way to dump yard? Many a time, the generator, that is the occupier, that is the waste generator. For example, I can also be a waste generator if I am not following the color codes, or when I am not, taking care of, the battery waste that is coming from my home, and I am mixing it with my other wet waste. In that way, I am also a generator. So, the silent features of this rule lays down responsibility of the hazardous waste generator regarding pollution prevention and waste minimization through reuse, recycling, and recovery. And some of the important, features that is very pertinent to this hazardous waste management rule is that authorization requirement for managing hazardous waste. That what does it mean by that? Authorization requirement means that every occupier of the facility which is engaged in the generation, handling of the hazardous waste is required to make to the State Pollution Control Board to obtain authorization for their activity. Say, for example, I may be a small laboratory which is involved in in tissue culture facility, right? Since I am a biology student, I think many of you are from biology background, they can relate it with that. Even in the tissue culture processing or any small laboratory facility, we are releasing one or the other kind of waste to the environment. It could be small minor waste, or it could be a waste that may have the ability to create a further, which is having the ability to be hazardous in future, because that is also defined as a hazardous waste according to our rule. So in such case, I as a occupier of the facility is required to make to the State Pollution Control Board to obtain the authorization for my activity. Similarly, there are also rules that make it mandatory. I just told you about a newspaper report in Haryana. Yes. See, yeah. Second one is that rules to make it mandatory for the treatment, storage, and disposal of the hazardous waste as per the guidelines issued by the Central Pollution Control Board, and direct the respective state pollution control to identify the location for the land for the construction of the hazardous waste, and ensuring proper registration or skill development and monitoring to check the generation and recycling of the hazardous waste. In fact, there has been one discussion in many forums with regard to the treatment of the hazardous waste. So it was being felt that there needs to be more facility for the treatment, storage, and disposal of the so-called hazardous waste, in order to ensure, maybe because we have seen that the rapid industrialization over the last several years is also one of the reason for the release of the waste to the environment. So if we have one treatment, storage, disposal facility installed at least in every district to a great extent, and depending upon the presence of the industry, we may increase it to 1, 2, or 3. But however, in every district, if we have one such facility, to a great extent we can reduce the release of the so-called hazardous waste to the environment. So the feature, the important feature of this 2016 guideline is also asking for the setting up of the so-called treatment, storage, and disposal facility, as well as the State Pollution Control Board, in order to take into action. Third important, of course, this was also there in other amended hazardous waste management rules as well, that talks about hazardous waste identification. It is also very important that we need to create a awareness program and give awareness to, starting from school, of course, school kids still, to everybody, even at the domestic, workers, as well as at the householders also, they need to know about how to segregate the waste. So hazardous waste identification is also very important, and in this regard, a small booklet on this hazardous waste management was released by, I think, Central Pollution Control Board. I think some of you must have seen this, which specifies the criteria for the identification of the hazardous waste. It can be through process knowledge, where the information about the raw material and the process generating is analyzed. As a generator, I should be knowing that it is a hazardous waste and it should not be mixed with the other waste. And a occupier, or that is me as a generator, can choose to rely on either a professional expertise to determine whether the waste is hazardous, or by sending the waste to a certified laboratory for testing. Now, this is more applicable not to householders like me, but to industries, right? Similarly, very important thing is storaging and labeling requirements. Storaging and labeling requirement. Now, the facilities generating hazardous and other waste, they can store the waste for a certain period of time and the quantity, with the exception for which the State Pollution Control Board is deciding the authority. So the facility which is storing this hazardous waste, they must mark the hazardous waste containers with the labels, which is given in the Form 8 of the rules, that talks about ignitability, corrosibility, etc. And they do talk that all those should be labeled with the so-called fluorescent yellow color background with the hazardous waste, and hand handle with care symbols, which is written in usually red color in Hindi and English as well as in vernacular language. So color codes for the labeling purpose is also mentioned in the form 8 of the rule. Similarly, another important provision that is being given, or the silent feature of the rule, is the accumulation of the so-called storage area. As per the hazardous waste management rule of 2016, the occupier and the operator, that means I, who is generator, and in my factory, if an operator is there, he must ensure certain safety measures in the area where the hazardous waste is being stored. Now the access must be locked and restricted from unauthorized entry. So spill control needs to be checked, firefighting, internal communication equipment, all should be regularly tested in order to ensure that they are complying with the rules and regulation. Then another important thing, transboundary movement of the hazardous waste. It also applicable to both import as well as export. That is through hazardous, though hazardous waste, banned from import in India for disposal. However, it is allowed for, as I told you in the one of the slide, it is allowed for the so-called recycling as well as for reuse and recovery, as well as the co-processing of the metals, right? So the hazardous waste management rule defined the procedure that should be applicable in the case of hazardous waste, whether it is if it is import and export, along with the responsibility of the importer and the exporter, and also give a list of hazardous and other waste which is being prohibited for import. Then again, we need to keep a record keeping is also required, where the waste generator as well as the operator of this facility maintain a record of weekly inspection, transportation manifest, waste analysis test, training that they have conducted for their facility managers, etc. Similarly, use of hazardous waste in co-processing industries like cement manufacturing, energy, material recovery at the time of its disposal are also been focused in the rule. Then it also laid down what are the duties of the authorities. A list of every authority engaged in the hazardous waste management and their corresponding duty have also been given in the hazardous waste management rule of 2016. In 2000, late rule, which was amended many times. The latest amendment, as I told you, came in the year 2023 as well. In one of the amendment, that is in 19 amendment, solid plastic waste was prohibited from being imported into country, including in the special economic zone. Similarly, exporters of silk waste, they were given exemption from requiring permission from the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. So we see that from time to time there has been several amendments that has been made to the what do you call it as hazardous waste management rule, and time and again it has been necessitated that we need to take a proactive action in order to ensure that the waste generated from industry, municipal or any other waste are segregated, and it is not directly thrown to the environment, which may impact the human health and environment. In addition to what I have told you, we do also have other rules which are indirectly or directly talking about the hazardous waste in India, that is plastic manufacture, usage and waste management rule of 2009, then batteries rule of 2001, then municipal solid waste management and handling rules 2000, then recycled plastic manufacture and usage rule 1999, which was amended in 2016. Later on, e-waste management and handling rule of 2016. One of the biggest challenge today is also e-waste and its management, right? So all these are also some of the what do you call it as the some of the 1 minute. Yeah, all these are some of the other rules that are applicable in managing and controlling of the hazardous waste. In addition to that, I think I am sure that some of you are from biological sciences. They can also really relate that biomedical waste management rule is also a very important rule that is in a way talking about how it is important to manage the biomedical waste, because in a way they are also considered to be a hazardous waste. One of the good example, I mean, as a student of a science or a student of an industry, anybody, everybody has an obligation to ensure that the waste that is coming from their lab are treated as per the available provisions and guidelines, in order to ensure that the waste escaping from their laboratory are not becoming any biological weapon, or you can say weapon, etc. For example, yes sir, yes ma'am, yes Bridget sir, बताइए, पूछिए sir. Any query, any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So as a science laboratory. Ji ma'am.
Can I ask you one question, ma'am?
Ji ma'am.
Ma'am, I want to know a little bit about that radioactive hazard. I also want to know how they store, like waste कहाँ पे store करते होंगे? आपको कुछ idea हो तो मैम?
Ma'am, I don't have much idea, but then definitely I can tell you about management of radioactive. I think, are you talking about the radioactive substances that is stored in the laboratory for experimental purpose, ma'am?
For experimental purposes also, and for plant also, they are waste. Like some of the material they should have to store somewhere, right?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know. I don't much information about it, but then definitely I can tell you, ma'am. Radioactive waste is also one major source of hazardous waste, or waste responsible for causing, human health, etc. And that is why probably you must have seen that whenever we work in a laboratory that is dealing with the radioactive substances, we have to follow the specific protocol and provision in order to work with, because majority of them are either carcinogenic in nature or mutagenic in nature. So we do have a, what do you say, call it as a good, what do you call it? There is something called as good laboratory management, GLP, something is there. Ji ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we have good laboratory practices, which is, of course, Food and Drug Administration. They have also, come up with good laboratory practices, which should be followed whenever we are dealing with these kind of, substances which may pose a threat to human health. Number one. Number two, ma'am, we also have a Drugs and Cosmetic Act in India, which was amended many times, and I think very recently, I think, I don't remember the year, that also in one of the schedule they did talk about what are the procedure and protocol to be followed in good laboratory practices. So if you please look into that, ma'am, I think you will get a good idea about how do you manage with it. In addition to that, there are specific laboratories is extensively dealing with these hazard, what do you call it as, radioactive substances. They have come up with their own protocol, because today radioactive substances are part and parcel of many laboratory experiments, which are carcinogenic in nature. So and I think those who are working with especially clinical trials, preclinical trials, for the purpose of carcinogenetic testing and mutagenic testing also, one may be exposed to these things. I think, ma'am, if you look into good clinical laboratory practices, you will get, I mean, I'm talking in terms of the regulatory guidelines for that.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you,
I
ma'am.
hope I was able to clarify your doubt.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, if anything is there, I will definitely try, and you can write to me.
Yes, because I like many times, like they dispose, sometimes they for experiment also they dispose in a sea, right?
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
I'm just thinking very much about that. How
No, ma'am. That is not about. That is not at all. That is not at all an approved or a legal way of disposing of waste. Because, ma'am, our PPT also. 1 minute, I just take you there. It says that the rule says that ensure safe handling, generation, processing, treatment, package, storage, transportation, reuse, reprocessing, collection, conversion, and offering for sale, destruction, and disposal of hazardous waste. So when you want to dispose your hazardous waste, you should follow the applicable guideline. In fact, it is
Yes,
also
ma'am.
clear in this. I think we don't have the time for taking up the complete guideline, but it do talk about how to dispose it, because disposal, one should not do a disposal without following the proper rules and guidelines. I ma'am, say for example, I may be having a small factory outlet. It may be generating lot of toxic substance. Now my raw material that I am using for a production may not be a hazardous substance, but the end product could be toxic in nature, or over a period of time it could be hazardous or toxic in nature. So there is a proper procedure to be followed for the disposal, because many a time the disposal of the waste can also release harmful gases to the environment, just like in the case of just what is happening in case of dioxin, right? Whenever you burn a chlorine containing compound, it will release hazardous substances, ultimately impacting human health and environment, right? So we cannot, I mean, it is not advisable. I will, ma'am, if you give permission, I will open that CDC webpage that did talk about how Center for Disease Control has taken a stock of cases, especially in United States, that talked about how the dumping of the hazardous waste had led to environmental contamination. I told you about Love Canal case. That was a very old case, right? But there are many other examples coming that has come up. Just Google me, if you can type the dump yard burning Kerala. That was a huge news some 3-4 months back. It is also an example of how lack of awareness, as well as care by the municipality or whoever led to huge environmental threat in that area. That also talk about how we should not be disposing the waste in open yard.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I seen dump yard in Kerala.
And I think, ma'am, if you can also look into that, that also talk about how NGT has imposed a crore of, I think, 10 crore or 1 crore, right, for polluting the environment.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, in our Ahmedabad, there is a very big dump yard
Yes.
here.
That is also air quality has gone down, and it is also interfering with our human health. Ultimately, ma'am, all these can be linked to right to health, right to safe living, right to safe environment, because we may not be impacted. If you look into a generational, 3 generation, I'm a little bit deviating from the topic. If you look into a 3 generational study, our forefathers lived up to the age of 90, 100.
Yeah.
Our parents, they are healthy up to 80, 70. We may live up to the age of maximum 60. And our younger generation are finding a lot of health issue even at the age of 6, 10, 10, isn't it? All these are because of the impact that is in the environment through food, whatever means. I mean, of course, we cannot prevent the developmental activities. However, we as a citizen must ensure, if we need to see our children, grandchildren to live up to the age of 60, 70.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
So I just will take last line and then stop, ma'am. There is one more slide for that.
Okay, ma'am.
So,
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you, ma'am. So the hazardous waste management rule do talk about, the safe disposal of the hazardous waste. And for the disposal of cases, enforcement of any legal right, or giving relief and compensation for damages to persons and property relating to environment, we have this National Green Tribunal, which was established in the year 2010. This is a newspaper clipping that I have taken from that talk about, how an anti-pollution panel notice was given to Government Medical College and Hospital in Chandigarh. The Chandigarh Pollution Control Committee has issued notice to Government Medical College and Hospital for allegedly trying to dump biomedical waste at Sector 25 garbage processing plant. We had issued notice to this institute, and they shall follow up. I mean, it talks about, what is this? So they also talk about, what is this biomedical waste. According to Indian Society of Hospital Waste Management, the quantum of waste that is generated in India is estimated to be 1 to 2 kg per bed per day in a hospital and 600 gram per day per bed in a general practitioner's clinic. It is estimated that 20 to 25% of total hazardous waste is biomedical. So biomedical is a separate entity as such, right, ma'am? But when you look into the hazard nature of it, it is also a hazardous waste, and it is because COVID, the presence of what do you call it as, or the what do you call it? Recently new variants, mutations of pathogens have been reported. In a way, all these are generated as a result of a mutation. Some may be beyond human control, but some may be because of lack of awareness amongst the hospital authorities or whoever may be responsible for that, when they throw out or release these waste to the open public. Ultimately, it is interfering with the human life, environment, etc., and causing a threat to human life. There are so many such examples that is been reported that do talk about the need to ensure that we need to manage the hazardous waste in order for a safe environment. So in conclusion, I would just want to tell that ineffective hazardous waste management is considered to be one of the biggest problem, especially in the urban cities. If you go to cities, villages, I hope some of you do agree with me that in villages, especially elderly people, they do a great care in disposing or dumping of their waste, isn't it? They are more, I think, they are more educated in that. They don't dump it into the village, what do you call it, as a pond, which they may be using it for some for drinking purpose, etc. Whatever reason, there are at least some kind of a awareness amongst them. I'm not saying that urban cities people are not aware about it. It is just simply a habit because of their busy schedule, whatever reason we can call it as. It says that the ineffective hazardous waste management is highly seen in what do you call it as urban centers, and according to some research, approximately 46% of the hazardous waste is landfilled, 9% is incinerated, and 45% is recycled. 46% is landfilled means what? That it is simply going to the land, it get filled in that, and I don't know whether they are using any mechanism or not. Ultimately, this landfilled waste is also interfering with the overall soil health, ultimately impacting the plant growth and agricultural productivity. I hope all of you agree that today, along with land, water, and air, soil is also considered to be a very important resource, and there has been an increasing, movement that has taken place both at national and international level to talk about how to ensure and conserve our soil. So landfill will also dumping of the hazard as a landfill also lead to contamination and pollution of the soil. I think Government of India maybe there was some effort made to create increasing awareness about the maintaining the soil health, and we do have so many schemes that is being released in order to ensure soil health, etc. As I told you, 46% to 45% of the hazardous waste will go to the landfill. 9% is incinerated, meaning that it is burned. So when you burn, that also is not advisable. Burning, for example, all of you know about what has happening in the paddy stalks that is burned in Delhi, right? Releases harmful gases. Similarly, 45% is recycled, fine. Now, as an urbanization increases, waste management problem, especially in mega cities, is also rising, and economic development is in the recent years has resulted in significant increase in the generation of the hazardous waste. We have done association of, there is something called as ASOCAM, as well as the agencies like consultancy agency like PwC, that is Price Water, Coop, something like that. They have showed that hazardous waste are mounting at a rate of 2 to 5% per year. And there are some studies which estimate that by 2050, about 50% of the India's population will live in urban area, and waste generation will grow 5% every year. So an increase in this number of the so-called treatment and the increase in the amount of the treatment, storage and disposal facility is required in order to manage the rising waste that is generated from the different sources. So in conclusion, hazardous waste are very dangerous and it can cause significant harm to environment and human health. And this hazardous waste could be toxic, ignitable, corrosive, reactive. And though we have several laws and legislation to manage the hazardous waste, we have this as early as 2009, all these are in place. Though we have this in management of this hazardous waste, it is necessary to strengthen its enforcement, and awareness also need to be created amongst all the stakeholders for managing the hazardous waste. Technical issues which is pertaining to the waste treatment and disposal also need to be strengthened, and the technology input also requirement that also have to be worked out in order to achieve a sustainable development. So with this, I will conclude my presentation. I will just share with you that CDC report because I think you will find it very interesting. If you have any query, any questions, you can ask.
Ma'am, what is this biomedical waste? Is there any way to treat it?
Biomedical waste, ma'am, there are if you look into the biomedical waste management rule, they have given certain provision because there are I think I don't now remember the classification. You have hard waste, you have waste in the form of syringes, you have waste in the form of biodegradable waste. So no, but depending on the nature of
Ma'am,
the
can
waste.
I intervene, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Please, sir. Please, sir.
The question madam has asked, for biomedical waste, government has set up an agencies in different area who will collect all the biomedical waste from the hospitals, and they have a incineration system and they have their own plants. Gujarat leads in this biomedical waste management, and people from other states and other countries do visit Gujarat. How we are handling biomedical waste?
Okay, thank you, sir.
GPCB, Gujarat Pollution Control Board is very much active in this thing, and we have different agencies like Enclair and other agencies who are handling biomedical waste. We were best in COVID. Gujarat was one of the best state handling the COVID accessories during COVID period. I am in touch with some of the consultant in this COVID handling things and biomedical waste handling agency. So I exactly know that how they work. But there are specific agency. Every doctor has to take the membership of this agency. Then and then they can run their hospital or their clinics.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Plants, sir?
Thank you, sir. Madam, please.
Even the microbiology college has to be the part of this agency. They also have to take the membership of this biomedical waste agency.
Okay.
Where in Gujarat is this plant, sir?
The criteria is within 100 kilometers they should have a plant. So within 2-3 districts there will be one plant. In Surat we have, then in Vapi also there is one plant. In Ahmedabad there is a huge plant nearby Mehsana area, and some of the doctors they own this company and they are handling this.
Okay, so Bridges, sir, what they are doing by collecting these biomedical
They will
waste?
incinerate the waste, and the ash will be sent to the dump yard.
Okay, but what will be the
again,
product
incineration will
for that?
cause
Recycling
hazardous
or they
gases,
are
no?
doing what?
But it is in a controlled condition, and that is the only way where the plastic is again recycled, because it's the equipments which are used in this medical field are of the virgin plastics, so they are recycled. and it's a huge business of this biomedical waste plastic also.
What about the syringes and other things? Like they
It will be
cannot.
melt, it incinerated, it, they get incinerated.
Okay,
We
thank
have
you,
a
sir.
very huge incinerators.
Okay, thank you, Bridget sir, for the information. As sir, I mean, this was a new information for me about the availability of this facility and the agency. But I think even the rule, we do have this biomedical waste management rule that also talk about how to treat with the isn't it, sir? If I am correct, they also talk about how to deal with the specific kind of waste. And coming from this, like for example, autoclave is also used. Then microwave. I mean, depending upon the nature of the waste, they may go for shredding or recycling or disposal. But again, as per the available guidelines, and probably under the guideline, they might have established these agencies in order to treat with various waste. But in spite of all these things, we do have a biggest challenge that is before us, that is treating of this biomedical waste. Not only biomedical waste, all kind of hazardous waste. And as a student of environmental science, we all of us need to ensure that our environment is safe, so as to make this land a livable land for our generations to come, because it is a intergenerational property which we have received from our great grandfathers or forefathers, which should be passed on to the next generation, or else the coming generation will be more into all those kind of canned food or the industry based food, and the concept of the agriculture, everything may go in danger. So with this, I conclude my session. I take my this opportunity to thank all the participants for patient hearing and participation. My special thanks to Professor Bharat Maitreya sir for inviting me, sir. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to me. Thank you so much, sir. I also thank Professor Nainesh Modi sir, HRDC.
Yes, I
University.
hope.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am, you were about to show one report, CDC
Yes, sir.
report.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes. It is a CDC report, ma'am.
And whatever you have to communicate or concern with the subjects, some query and doubts,
Ji,
so
sir.
you may contact to her, and please kindly give your mail ID.
Ji,
So
sir.
if any kind of this material or any kind of requirement or any kind of subject knowledge,
Ji, sir.
so all the participants, those who are communicate to you,
Ji,
and
sir.
have this particularly in environmental hazardous part,
Ji, sir.
so they know more about it. So
Thank
now
you so much.
I hope that if any questions, any query or any questions now.
No, sir.
Okay, so I hand it over to Anil.
Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Bindu Vijay ma'am for delivering such informative lecture, and thank you all for your active participation. Thank you.
Thank you. I can be
Thank
reached
you.
at. I can
Very
be
good
reached.
evening to all of you, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Nice session, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I can be reached at bvijay@gnlu.ac.in. Thank you.